Hi everybody, Russ and my Hammers 11. Hope you're all safe and well. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you're made aware of any time we put new content on. Today's guest, well, what can we say about Mr. Holland? I think overall, something over 300 appearances he's made for the club. 30, I wrote it down, 32 goals, 12 years. 1975 Cup final winner, scored in a 76 European Cup Winners' Cup. You wish, bless you.
Yeah.
Against Anderlecht. It is Mr. Pat Holland. We all know it is. How are you, Pat?
Yeah, I'm very well. Welcome, Russ, and thank you for welcoming me to your show. And look forward to the next half hour, 40 minutes.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. How's the new world, this world coronavirus? How is it for you at the moment?
Well, for me, it's been a little bit disappointing in so much that I was working for Arsenal as a senior scout for nearly coming on 10 years.
Wow.
And they brought it to an end when they got rid of maybe 20 personnel from the senior scout department. So that's difficult. So what I'm doing at the moment, I'm working for an agent who's a nice fella, and they're sort of bit scratching for players. So I'm going out and watching a bit of non-league at the moment, because it's very difficult to get in to watch games in this climate. And unless you're associated with a club who can email and get you through the door, then it's quite difficult. But it's quite enjoyable. I've been to Waverley and I've been to Brentwood. So I'll see how the other half live, and I've quite enjoyed it. Football.
I'm from Hornchurch, so I sort of get,
Gidea Park. Yeah, that'll do me, Hornchurch.
But yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Yeah, you got to think unless you're associated with a club, getting into that, because I mean, the Premier League games only is 300 people allowed in the ground, isn't it? So
sure.
Yeah, it must be really tricky. But as you said, non-league, and obviously a lot of people are going to non-league at the moment because they can get in.
Well, exactly. I mean, Brentwood, I thought maybe 400 there. I might be over the top. Might have been 300 to 400, but they looked as if they were enjoying themselves, and they just want to watch a game of football and socialise.
I think that's the main thing, isn't it? It's the socialising aspect.
Of course, it is. Yeah,
I mean, it's not about. I mean, as you know, I've been to West Ham. It's not about the football for us. It's about the socialising and the drinking and meeting up with mates and and even more so. If the Premier League want you to pay 15 quid for a pay-per-view match, rather spend that down a non-league team. Do you know what I mean? And
and it supports them as well, which is great. Yeah. When you go there, you feel as if you're going back to a tradition of football in many respects.
Yeah.
It's great to go to a Premiership game. We know that, the atmosphere, but to go there, they're true supporters as well in many respects.
Yeah, they are definitely. And hardened supporters, isn't it? Because as you said, they're going all over the way. No, they don't get seats.
No. There's no niceties.
No. That's like because obviously I work at the club, so I'm obviously I've worked there for many years, and so I never get to watch a football game properly. Do you know what I mean? So my daughter, obviously we live in Hornchurch, so we weren't too far away from Rush Green, so we'd go and watch the ladies play, West Ham Women's, and that was my sort of back to roots. You know what I mean? Shouting at the referee and hollering and screaming.
You get plenty of that.
Yeah, particularly non-league as well. But that's brilliant, man.
Yes.
Yeah, because you said, I remember Arsenal, they put a load of redundancies out, including the mascot, wasn't it, famously as well?
Yeah, the mascot bit the dust as well, but I think he's been rescued by himself. It was disappointing because a friend of mine was a chap called Steve Rowley, who was the chief scout at Arsenal, who was a great West Ham supporter in the 70s and 80s. So we had an affinity because he would watch the sides that I played in, and if was out of work, which occasionally did happen in football, he would come to the rescue, and I'd go and do a bit of scouting for him at Arsenal. And they're an excellent club, and listen, I had a great time there, and these things just happen. There's a lot of people out of work, and it's just one of those times, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. It is unfortunate, and it was. Yeah, it said it's even tougher as well now because obviously, with all the lockdowns and different
Sure.
restrictions everywhere as well,
Yeah.
it's even tougher
Yeah.
in it. And so that's why we
Yeah.
have to do it on. That's why we have to do it on this little thing.
Yeah.
But we managed to sort it out, didn't we, Pat? Eventually, so it's all
Yes, we
good.
did.
It's all it's all good, and it's very easy once it's up and running.
I
Um,
know.
anyway, let's go back. Let's go back to let's go back to the West Ham days because that's what this channel's about. That's what everyone wants to know about and find out about.
Sure.
Now, for any fan that comes on, I ask about why they're a West Ham fan, and for the players, I ask about joining the club and stuff like that. So that's what we'll do with you. So obviously, you're a Poplar boy. If I
Yeah.
get my Poplar boy. So was it always going to be West Ham?
No, because I was an Arsenal supporter.
That's what I thought I was going to say.
Yeah, and my first game, believe it or not, my uncle Tom took me to watch West Ham play Fulham, which I believe Jimmy Hill played in, and West Ham won 6-0. So that would have been about 58, I believe, that time. So then, obviously, I got interested in football. My dad took me over to the Arsenal, and they were playing Man United, and I was a Man United supporter by that time. Bobby Charlton and your kids growing up. And the Arsenal beat them 5-1, I believe. I think it could have been round about the time of Munich, but when you're little and you don't understand that. So my father, who's an Arsenal supporter, said, look, you can't see Man United every week, but we can watch the Arsenal on a regular basis. So I become an Arsenal supporter. And on the estate where I lived, it was 99% West Ham and the rest was me, Arsenal. So it was a difficult environment. And West Ham were a bogey side to the Arsenal round about that time. He took me over to the Arsenal, to West Ham one evening, and you're too young to remember. It was Guy Fawkes night, and it was 1960. And West Ham beat the Arsenal 6-0. And my father, who's a dock worker, met up with his mates in the chicken run. So we were standing on the wooden platforms. I had my red and white scarf on and my bobble hat and rattle. And he said, my dad, he said, as the goals went in, you got lower and lower. And in the end, you were sitting on the old wooden platforms. Which brings us forward a few years because I made my debut against the Arsenal.
Yeah.
And those very fellas that were still with my dad that evening watched the game. And one of them said, who's in the 7, the kid playing outside right? He said, that's Patsy Holland's boy, young Patsy, the boy that stood with us 9 years earlier, and it was just incredible, really, to think it had gone that far, So I think once you put a shirt on, that's the end of it, my interest in Arsenal was sort of there, but once you put the shirt on, you're playing for a club and you're representing them and you're 100% all the way with that.
Yeah. That's amazing, isn't it? That sort of
Yeah.
like 9 years, that serendipitous sort of
I
like,
know.
circle of life type. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
mean, and obviously before you made your debut, was there other clubs potentially looking at you, or was it
No,
always?
it was. I was quite late. I played for East London and I was in and out the side from about 12 on to 15. So there was 2 years gap when I never played for East London. But I got back in my school, which was George Green's. It's gone over the Isle of Dogs now, but it was down the East India Dock Road.
Sure.
It was a lovely school. It was grammar school, and they were the only grammar school that played football in that area. Strangely enough. Anyway, I got back in the East London side and we played some, and a chap called Arthur Lamb, who's passed away, bless him, see me and spoke to Wally St. Pierre. And Wally come and watch East London versus, oh crikey, I'm trying to think, the district near Tottenham. It's gone out of my head. Anyway, Wally went there and he was going to look at the number 8, but he didn't like the 8, he liked the 10. And what it was, there was a boy called Billy Gardner, and for some reason we swapped shirts in the dressing room before the game. And I had that number shirt. And Wally tells a story that Bill Nick, who lived not far from the stadium that hosted the game, because Bill Nick lived near Tottenham Stadium, believe it or not, amazing, in a terraced house. He said Bill was at the game and he quite liked the boy Holland who was playing with the 10 shirt, and so did Wally. So he said it was a race to get there first, and Wally won the race. And he come up, he was a big man, intimidating man, great big hands, and he frightened me a little bit. And he said, I'd like you to come down to West Ham and train. And you can't say no, you know. And I just said, yeah. And I went, my first evening was on a Thursday night, and I went with my duffel bag, and I went into the main stadium. And as you walked in, all the boys were warming up outside. It wasn't organised. They were just getting ready for training. And I can remember it to this day. As I walked in, there was a lad called Kevin Bliss who played for Newham, and he flicked the ball up and caught it on the back of his neck. And I thought, I can't do that. I thought, should I turn back? And anyway, I was brave. I went all the way. And my first coach that night was John Lyle, who I still feel was the best U-team coach I've ever seen or heard by a country mile. You know, I'm a great manager, but I often look at people and see if they're youth team coaches as well. And his manner and the way he spoke to young players was fantastic. So that was my introduction to West Ham, which wasn't a bad one.
That's not a bad one at all. And obviously, and then obviously you went on to have a 12-year career at the club, you know. And
certainly, yeah.
And you know, nowadays, obviously, you know, back in that era, playing a testimonial year and was common practice, really. Like nowadays, like people like Mark Noble and the exceptions to the rule, isn't it? You don't get players hanging around for many seasons, unfortunately.
No,
but obviously, and it's a shame, isn't it? I think because you don't get that sort of.
Yeah, I went from a playing career into a coaching career, so I've experienced both sides of it, really. I was, believe it or not, I was coaching at the age of 17 at West Ham. John see something in me, and he encouraged me to come and work with the kids. They were 11s and 12s, and I would travel from Poplar, finish training, go home, and then get the bus, because I wasn't driving then, and the train to Chadwell Heath to do the Tuesday and Thursday evenings. And then as it progressed, I had my own centre in Crikey, going out towards Tilbury.
Okay.
And I would take kids from that area on a Tuesday and Thursday night as a player. So I trained on the Thursday, take them for a couple of hours, and then on the Saturday I'd be playing in the first team. It's amazing, really. But John encouraged me to do that, and it was great because what it did, it gave me a career not outside of football, but a further career in football. I had to back in through injury.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? That was obviously I wasn't around for the Lyle years or the Greenwood years at all. So, you know, hearing all these stories about, you know, obviously he saw something in you at 17 that he nurtured. It's just incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. And it was a tradition at West Ham to do that. They had all the players, if they could, to get them to coach in the schools in the afternoon. I think mainly to stop them going down the pub in the afternoon. But Ron really encouraged that. And my first experience was at a school called Shipman, which was a tough school over in Canning Town. And I went and I thought, blow this. I mean, you've got to remember, I was only 18, 19.
Yeah.
So the kids there were like coming up 16, 17. So they weren't too far away from my age. And then from there, I went to Plaistow Grammar, which was a marvellous school. And I coached there for 2 years in the afternoons. But around about that time, Paul Brush was a student, believe it or not, at that school. He can remember me coaching. And he went on to be a good coach. Alan Kirbishy would be around that era. Curbs was doing a bit of coaching as a player later on. Frank Lampard did a bit, but I think business got in the way.
Yeah.
It was an encouragement that by the coaches and the manager that really set the precedent for that type of thinking at West Ham.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, and by all accounts, I've interviewed quite a few people who in the ex players who are still in the coaching staff, like Kevin Keane and Zavon Hines, and Cork and Cheska. And again, every year group apparently has a West Ham professional or ex player in the setup now. So so they're obviously.
It's a tradition. Yeah.
So that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant, isn't it? And
I think because what it does, what you basically was doing as a coach, you'd be teaching them what you'd learnt that morning from your coach.
Yeah.
So it was like, it seems common sense now, but it was great because you could chat and talk to the boys. If they come into West Ham, they'd be ready for that type of coaching.
Yeah,
So it was
definitely.
marvellous.
Yeah. It's and obviously the playing career. I mean, again, not a lot of West Ham, particularly in recent history, haven't won a lot. To be fair,
Yeah.
and obviously the 1975 rather FA Cup final. As a player, what's it like? What's it like walking out a cup final at Wembley?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's something you can't really explain. I mean, the nearest I've got to it, and it's the film Gladiator. And
Okay.
when I watched it, it sort of thought, blimey, doesn't that resonate? Um, you're there. I mean, the day's too much, really. There's a lot going on. And then I think we met the Duke of Kent before and shook hands. But it's when you break away that you experience. You basically break away on your own. I mean, things have changed now. You watch them warm up. They're a tighter group. We broke away individually to warm up because you'd only about 5 minutes. And as I broke away, I just looked up, because the whole arena's there, and you thought, Christ. And it does, for a moment, it makes you, it takes the guts out of you, really.
Yeah.
You've got to get to grips with it quickly, because in a few minutes' time, the referee's going to blow the whistle. But when I see the film Gladiator and they go into the arena, slightly different, they're fighting for their lives. And they look around and think, oh, here we go. And it was like that. It's just an amazing experience.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And obviously, we won that. Obviously, then we went to the Cup Winners. We was in there the following year. You scored in the final. Again, that must be like a step up, or because obviously the FA Cup is the FA Cup, and then to get to the Cup Winners' Cup final the year after. Obviously for you guys, you'd experienced the FA Cup final, but that must be another level, was it?
I think yes and no. I think if you said to me what do you remember most out of your career, I would say the Wembley day,
Yeah.
without a shadow of a doubt. It was just fantastic. I mean, it's a kid's dream to play there. I hope they don't water the competition down, because it's to the British at least, it's one of those great traditions.
Definitely.
The European Cupman's final was again exciting. We got through to the final, and I managed to score in that, which was, you can't lose that memory,
No.
whether you want to or not. It was mixed emotions. I give a penalty away, which I didn't think on the night. They had a player you might remember called Robbie Rensenbrink, who was he played for the Dutch World Cup side that lost to Germany that 1970, I believe. He was a good player. And he just got away from me, and I nicked it. I got a toe ender. So the ball goes away from him. He gets up and chases the ball, but the referee give a penalty. And so that's mixed emotions, because to score, and I should have scored a little bit later with a header come across. I didn't get hold of it properly. So, but to play in a final like that again, with everyone, because in those days everyone watched the final on telly. There wasn't the football that we see today, Russ. So for those games, they were very, very special for everybody in the country. So it was a massive audience watching it, and to score in it is, wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. And it just, all those, everyone talks about, Eintracht Frankfurt, sort of the semi-final, and everyone's been there. Apparently, everyone was there by now. Everyone I interview, I remember Frank. Really? Because there's only about how many tens of thousands were there, but this is about 100,000 were there by the sounds of it. But I mean, yeah, it was just and obviously looking back at things, obviously we've had a lot of spare time on our hands in lockdown, going back and watching, the games and reliving the goals and stuff. It was a special time, particularly for West Ham fans, that sort of time. And I mean, you obviously from 69 all the way up to 81. I mean, that was a nice time to be a West Ham fan, I would suggest.
Yeah, it was exciting times, and it was different because the stadiums then, I think the North and South Bank weren't seated then, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
The Eintracht Frankfurt game still is one of my greatest memories. It was just electric. I mean, for those who actually played in it, that's the game we talk about all the time, because the conditions, the crowd, Who knows how many were in there? We don't know. It was rocking. And when we come out, they started to sing Bubbles. And I remember being alongside the German defender that I played against in the first leg out in Germany, in Eintracht. And he looked at me, and he was a tallish lad, and I could see his face, and it frightened him. And it frightened me, I don't know about him, but the hairs on the back of your head went up. It was incredible. And Brooking, good old Trev that night, had one of them games where he couldn't do anything wrong, and the goal he scores was wonderful. But it was just a great victory, and it was an exciting game. They had 2 World Cup players in their side, Grabowski, and I can't remember the name of the other one. I should do. So they were a good side, and on the night, I think the crowd took us through. It was electric.
Yeah, it is. It's you look at those sort of I don't know what to call them, older games, but games from the past. It's like the crowd just seems to just be on another level. It just seems when they're more than anyone, when the West Ham crowd are up for it, they're up for it, aren't they? And this is
well, I experienced it recently. I was a guest for the opening of the Billy Bond stand.
Of course, yeah.
But we all come out on the pitch and form like a corridor of honour.
Yeah.
And so you're out there, and you're part of it now because the teams are beginning to run out for the start of the game. Newcastle they play.
Yeah.
You're on the side of it, but you're there, and it was unbelievable. And Bill got very emotional on the day, and it meant so much to him. But I think it meant a fantastic amount to the supporters as well. Yeah. There was only going to be one winner that day, and it wasn't going to be Newcastle. No. And the crowd flattened Newcastle. You could sense it. It's the atmosphere, and that's why people can't understand about the results we're getting in today's game. I know I'm diversing a little bit, but to play in front of empty stadiums takes the soul out of football.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I mean, we interview obviously a lot of players like yourselves, and obviously more, and some of the modern era players as well. And they say, sometimes, the crowd gives them, and you said about the Eintracht Frankfurt, the crowd basically pulled you over the line. It's like, they're saying, I'm feeling a bit rough, a good 15-20% the crowd could give us, to keep us going. And that's the one thing I think people miss. But some players flourish in it, don't they? Because they don't get the players up against their back. So the fans.
Well, I had an interesting call from, I think it was LBC. As I get older, my memory goes a bit. And it was because I'd played in the game when we played the Spanish side.
Oh, behind the closed doors game, yeah.
Yeah, the B-side to Real Madrid.
Yeah.
And I played in that, so they said, would you come on the show and just try and tell us about your memories of that evening? And so the first question he asked me, he said, what did the coach say before the game? I was 40-odd years ago, 45 years ago. I said, I can't remember. No. So, you can't remember? I said, no, I can't remember. I said, I can remember going out as a player onto the pitch and trying to collect your thoughts on how you're going to approach the game. Because it's purely an individual thing, whether you like it or not. It's how people react to that sort of situation. I said, I ended up having one of the best games I've ever had in my life at West Ham. There was no one there. But as I drove out after the game, there must have been about 50 supporters at the bottom as we drove out the car park, and they're all banging on the car. Well done, great game. And they just listened to it on the radio. And I did smile to myself. But you thought, there again is that emotion. They want to be part. And so it was a unique night, but it wasn't a great night in terms of enjoying the game as such. There was pressure, but there was no pressure from the crowd, etc.
Yeah, it is, and it was Castilla,
well remembered. Ross.
And I've just googled it, and because I was pretty sure it was, but I didn't want to say it. And I think that was the best. That was our biggest ever European victory as well, our club record. So.
Yeah.
So yes, so there we go. But yeah, no, it is weird. It's very strange. I mean, I go there. Obviously, I sort of, as I said, I'm one of the 300 at the Premier League games at the moment at London Stadium, and obviously you've got this bowl of a stadium, and there's literally like Well, it's so quiet. I can hear the journalists typing on their laptops. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's
I
so
know.
weird. It's
It
horrible.
is. It's strange times.
It is. It is. But at least football's on, and it gives us something to moan about, doesn't it? Rather than
Absolutely.
the news.
Absolutely.
So it is a
Yeah.
distraction. But anyway, talking about distractions, that's what this whole channel's about, really. To be fair. But anyway, let's go and talk about your 11, your Hammers 11. So as I said, Pat, everyone we've had on the channel, whether they're an ex-player or a fan, we get them to pick their 11. So for the players, it gets to pick from the 11 that they played with during their time. Now, unfortunately, you have quite a good spread of players from
Yeah, I've got a good spread
1969
of players.
to
I
81,
know. Yeah.
which is good but bad at the same time because there's too many to pick from.
That
So
doesn't make
obviously,
it easier.
no, and I can imagine there'll be lots of notable mentions. That's
Yeah.
how players get away with it. I'm going to pick this one, but I'd also like to mention as well, just so you
Yeah.
don't get annoyed. So that's what we'll do. So we'll start off in goal, Pat. In goal for the Holland 11. Who are we going to have?
Well, there's only two I can choose from, and that would be Mervyn Day, who I played with in the 75 and 76 finals, and obviously Phil Parkes. I'd seen a lot of great West Ham keepers as a young boy and as I grew older, but we're going to pick one of those two. So I would have to go for Phil, although I thought Mervyn was an excellent keeper as well.
Yeah, and wasn't someone like Parksy as well was like the world record holding, highest transfer fee for in essence a championship player. It's crazy when you championship team really, West Ham. It's just crazy when you think about how much money then for goalkeeper.
Yeah, I know.
Compared to nowadays, right? Okay, we'll put
top keeper.
He was, and a top bloke as well. Lovely guy
As well.
And obviously, much like he's just turned 70 as well.
I know.
So yeah, same as yourself. Anyway,
We're creeping on.
but he grew the mullet back for his birthday
His
celebration.
mullet's all right.
Yeah, he's still all right there. Unlike some of us, and I'm just half your age, and I've got less hair. Anyway, let's go into. Are we going to play 4 at the back, or are we going to play something? What are we going to play?
I'm going to go with a zonal 4.
Nice.
And again, I'm going to throw another name in, although I'm not going to pick him to disrupt you. I thought John McDowell was an excellent player. He could play right back, he could play left back, he could play centre half, he could play centre midfield.
Wow.
I had a conversation with John Lyle about him one day because John come to Spurs for a little spell when he lost his job at West Ham. Terry Venables got him in because of his knowledge. Spoke about John McDowell, and he said he had the potential to be a top player. So we never went any further than that. But my choice would be my old mucker, Ray Stewart, the fiery Scotsman at right back, who was a great lad. We worked well together as a unit. I'll try and get back and gang up. I remember we played Notts Forest one night and John Robertson was playing left wing and Ray was holding him up and I'm scurrying around and Robertson turned around to me and said, "Can you do me a favour and stop chasing back?" I said, "Well, I won't chase you back if you don't chase me back." And it was a bit of a laugh and it was great, but supporters don't see that. But Ray was an excellent player, good defender. I think he developed as a player at West Ham. And he had a love of the club. I always find this, when you meet up again, there's certain players have a love of the club, and Ray's one of those. He's a West Ham boy, and it means a lot to him to have played for the club.
Definitely.
So he'd be my right back.
Definitely. And you still can't understand what he says anyway, so it's even better.
No. So Tony Gale keeps setting him up.
Exactly. Go on then. Ray's in. Who's next then, Pat?
So alongside would be Alvin Martin.
Yeah.
Who, I remember as a little boy coming into the side, young Alvin.
Of course, yeah.
And he was a very, very talented kid. Took too many touches on the ball in training, but he developed into being a top player. We were going over there one night. I think it was Newcastle he was playing for, Shearer, and Alvin was marking him. I think Alvin by that time was a bit of an elder statesman.
Yeah.
He kept leaning on him without even jumping and winning the ball in the air, Alvin. It was just great to watch a man who knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
Who was on top of his profession. And if he'd been a little bit quicker, who knows? Who knows? But again, that he would be my centre half.
Yeah, and similar to Ray, they both,
Yeah,
tied to the club despite from not coming
yeah,
around these parts. You know what I mean? It's
sure.
lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So okay, so Alvin's in. Who is next then, Pat?
Well, that's a no-brainer, as you know.
Yeah,
Bobby
yeah.
Moore, who my debut, all the three World Cup players played in that game
Oh
against him.
wow.
So that was a wonderful experience just to be with them on the pitch.
Yeah.
He was a very quiet man. He never shouted at anybody. He just looked at you, which was enough.
Yeah.
It could cut you in half. But he had presence. If he walked into the dressing room, it was Bobby Moore. He was a celebrity of that time. I mean, he was the icon of the country. He was a blonde, good-looking fella, but he was a fantastic footballer. And he could adapt to anybody in society. No matter where he went, he'd feel comfortable, Bobby. I remember going down there one day in the summer. It must have been early 70s, just before he went. And I went there to do a little bit of training on my own. And all of a sudden, the door opened, and he walked in with Carlos Alberto. So I've got the England captain, and I've got the Brazilian captain,
Wow.
great 70 side. And he introduced me to Carlos Alberto, and I just thought, if you only had your camera with you, that'd be one of the old
selfies,
phone ones. Yeah, selfie. Yeah. So Bobby would be. Well, there's no doubt he's the top man for that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Bob's in. And who's the last piece of defence then, Pat?
I'm going to go for Frank because I thought he had Frank Lampard, great West Ham career. He was a tough boy, Frank. I'd be maybe finishing training, and he'd come up and go, "What are you doing this afternoon?" It wasn't a request; it was demand, really. And I go, and I was in my 20s. I go, "Well, I ain't got to do anything today. All right, hang around then. You can come and knock a few crosses for me." And he defended the far post. So a bag of balls, the two of us, I'd ping about 30 over, and he just got up, headed the balls. And he installed that in his son, young Frankie, that desire to be a top player. And you could never beat Frank in running if we were cross country. If we were going like the path was a bit tight, he'd push you in the bushes to stop you going past him. That was how competitive Frank was. But he was better than that. Technically, he was very good.
Yeah.
Got his distances right. He had a bad break when he was a young man, and he overcome that. I was at the club when he broke his leg, and he overcome that. So he would be my choice at left back.
That is a solid back four.
Yeah.
Or back five with Parksy. Oh, very solid. Right, let's move into the midfield then, Pat. You go through your 11 as you want to, man.
Being a coach, I'm a traditionalist. I'm 4-4-2, but I'm not going to go with this one. I'll balance it only just to get the players in.
Go for it.
The midfield player, so the 4 would be my old mate Billy Bonds, who could play anywhere really, and just one of the greats of the club. Just as a person, you couldn't wish to be a nicer man. I'm sure you know Russ, and you've met him. But he was a titan for West Ham. He was physically strong. I remember him saying, Dutch, he said, they don't give me enough credit. He said, I'm technically better than they think I am. And he got 14 to 15 goals that year from midfield.
Yeah.
And I went, Bill, I think you've got about 15, 16. I said, Bill, you've scored 16 goals from midfield. You've got to be a good player. And that's what he was. He was everything that West Ham, after Bobby left, he was the ideal fit. Different type of player, obviously, but a great West Ham player.
Yeah. And he sort of, and by, as you said, I didn't really think about that really, but obviously he taking over the mantle from Bobby, and he sort of was the right player for that era, wasn't he? He was more sort of like, because the game was more sort of, you think of the dirty Leeds team and and he's like, he was like a swashbuckling midfielder, and he was right for what, the 60s, it was all about it was obviously Moore was a stylish player, and the
Yeah,
game was very stylized. Then it became a bit not tougher, but it was more about the dirty leads and people having fights and stuff like
Liverpool were
that.
very aggressive.
Yeah,
There was
exactly.
a lot of strong sides at that stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't
So
realise, and the
no.
game was different. There wasn't
Mm,
referees were a little bit more lenient, let's say,
yes.
those days.
Yes. Right, we'll put Bill in. Okay, Bill's in. Who's next then, Pat?
Right. So to the left of that
Yep.
three, I'm going to put Trevor, and
Yep.
Trevor tended for some reason to drift quite a bit. If you watch the games and you really analyse him, he drifted a lot to the left. Um, I remember as a kid going through the door, and I come home from training the first week, and my dad said, "Who's the best player?" Expecting me to say Urs Peters or Moore, and I went Trevor Brooking, and he went, "Oh right," and he had something as a young man. It took him a little bit of time to get into the side. I think he was about 21 when he really established himself because they played him at some stage up front. Ron put him as a striker, which I kind of worked that one out. In today's game, it might have fitted, but he just had a wonderful ability. His awareness was incredible. That's a gift. The
Yeah.
awareness, you can't coach that. He had this ability, as you know, to let the ball run when he marked. He done me and Bill in training one day, and we're both looking at one another, thinking, "Where's he gone?" And he's off down the road buying a newspaper. So that was Trevor, and I think I always say to people, he got 100 goals in his career, which is phenomenal for me. That's without the ones that he created.
Yeah.
So top player and a good man to boot. He's whenever you see him, he's got the old chortle, hello, typical posh, but a lovely man and a great West Ham player again.
Yeah, exactly. And he obviously was Bill's henchman, wasn't it? Or Bill was Brooking's henchman, So
Bill was his,
yeah, not the other
Bill
way.
looked
God, no.
after him.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
did
I
do.
think Bill
Yeah,
looked after everybody.
yeah, I can imagine. Right, okay, Trevor's in. Who is next then, Pat?
Well, this is a chap that I was in the room one day with Steve Rowley, the Arsenal chief scout, and who walked in? Wenger. So I had this thing about Arsenal having a holding midfield player. And so I'm trying to convince Wenger that we should be looking for a holding midfield player. And I mentioned the England World Cup side, of which the one who was a holding midfield player was Nobby Stiles. And Steve Rowley said to me, he's a bit younger, he said, he wasn't very good, was he, Stiles? I went, Steve, I said, he was a top player. I said, he could break play up, he could pass. I said, he was ideal for that position. I said, but England had a player. I said, they had three world-class players. I said, they had Gordon Banks, they had Bobby Moore, and they had Bobby Charlton. I said, but there was a player there who I thought, and I still do to this day, think he's a world-class player. And that's Martin Peters.
Yeah.
Dad, I can remember him as a kid going to the club, technically top drawer, 6 foot plus in height, graceful, timing off the ball. You can't coach it. He was different class. And for me, it's got to be any side, Martin Peters.
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. And it's one of those things, isn't it? Obviously, everyone's we had the replays of the '66 World Cup and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And as you said, your debut, you had all three of them, and you're
I know,
playing.
lucky
It's
boy.
just
Yeah.
absolutely incredible, man. Absolutely
Yeah.
incredible. All right, Martin's in then. Martin Peters is in. Bless him. Who's next? Who have we got next?
Right. Well, I'm going to go lopsided now, which has messed me up a little bit. So I'll put my winger in. Oh, no, I'll put my striker in.
Yeah, go on him.
Obviously, Jeff Hurst, who's got to be in any West Ham side.
Yeah.
World Cup winner, 3 goals. I can remember watching him from the side as an apprentice, and his timing, his movement. I got quite friendly with Frank McClintock when I was at Tottenham because he was big muckers with Terry Venables, and we spoke about Jeff Hurst. And he said we could not mark him, the back four that he played in, Frank, which was the good Arsenal 70 side that won the double. He said his movement, his timing of his runs. He said we tried to catch him offside, we tried this. He said you can never ever catch the man out. And he was a fantastic player for West Ham at that time.
Yeah, he was. Certainly was. Yep, Sir Jeff. I actually once met him in a toilet. There we go.
Right.
I was in it was in a 3-man cubicle. I was in the middle.
Yeah.
I had Sir Jeff and I had Sir Clive Woodward on to my right.
Oh,
There we
blimey.
go. The most
Yeah.
regal piss I've ever had in my life. There we go. Right. All right. Sir Jeff Simbliss. Okay. Who is next? Then we've got 2 more
Right.
spots.
Well, I would have this fella in, but I never played with him, so I can't.
Okay.
But, the fella I would have in is Johnny Byrne,
Yeah.
who I was fortunate to watch the night that we beat Leeds 7-0.
Wow.
I think it was either the league or the League Cup, and he was just different class. Balls were going in to him. He was controlling them on his chest and volleying the ball out to Braidbrook or Sissons, either side. Didn't matter. And he turned up West Ham one day, been out to South Africa, and this little fat man turns up, and Ron introduced him to the group. We all knew he was. It was Johnny Byrne.
Yeah.
And we used to play in these tight squares, 3v3. And he said, Budgie's going to join in with us today. So he went with Bill and Trevor. So 1, 2, 3. And I can't remember who I was with, another 2. And we could not get the ball off them. I mean, it's 1 touch and 2 touch, even at that age, was fantastic. But I can't put him in, but I wanted to mention him. So there you go.
There you go.
Player I want to go for is Pop Robson.
Yeah.
Who I did play with and who was just a tremendous finisher. I mean, we'd do a lot of unopposed crossing and finishing, and we'd be out there for 40 minutes with John, just cross, and he never missed a target. His shape, he just had that low sense of gravity, technically excellent, could edit, could score with either foot, wasn't the quickest, just had a sense of where to be, that ability to put the ball in the back of the net. So Pop would be my, alongside Jeff Hurst.
Yeah, wow, that's not bad up to. And actually, interviewing a lot of people like David Cross and Tony Cottee as well. You know, the influence of Pop Robson, I think, wasn't lost. You know, he was their idol. You know, so even Crossy's, who's unfortunate to play with. But yeah, so anyway, who's the last person then, Pat?
The last one is Dev.
Yeah.
Who I still maintain should have scored more goals. He was a strange boy, Dev. He come in very late in a football term. He was from Southall, I think, Dev.
Yep,
turned up to train. I'm sure you've heard this story many times. We're doing all shoes running, and which means I run from one side of the pitch and your partner runs from the other side, and you cross, and then you get back to a point. And suddenly, after about 3 of these all shoes, they couldn't find Dev, and he'd fallen over. It was at the main ground we trained, and he'd gone over the chicken run barrier and was being sick the other side of it. Absolutely, bless him, coughed everything up. But he was a sort of boy, and if you talk to Tony Gale about it and Parksy, they'd turn up and he'd go in the cafe at 9 o'clock before you went training and had a full English breakfast, But he had a phenomenal talent. What he had for me was a change of pace over 5 yards, which you can't put that into anybody. No. Just that elusiveness to get away from you, excellent close control, ability to weave and balance past people as if they weren't there, and created a lot of goals for other people. Should have scored more himself for me, but for my era, you'd have to have Dev. I was a big fan of Johnny Sissons. I liked John. I didn't know him well enough, but I think Dev, for all the supporters of your era and people before that, he would have been. It's in every West Ham side.
Yeah,
and nice fellow as well.
Yeah, lovely guy. I've had him on as well.
Yeah,
Dev, man. That is a very strong team, Pat.
I know.
And also taking that team and putting them in a modern era on the bowling greens of London Stadium. Could you imagine what the likes of Dev and his pomp and Brookin would be able to do?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Anyway, I'd said 45 minutes, Pat, and I'm 44 minutes, so that's not too bad.
Right, man.
Yeah. There we go.
My daughter can have the room back.
Exactly. As I said I think when we interviewed Bobby Gould, we was like 45. He went, "Yep, all right, that's half time." And I was like, "No, you're right, Bob. 45 is enough, mate." Pat, man, it's been absolutely lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate obviously the technical getting all this up as well. So I really, really appreciate your time. So thank you.
And thank you, Russ. And my best wishes for all the listeners for the coming new year when it comes along. And I just wish we get back on track and we can go back to normality, as they say.
Yeah, I hope so.
Obviously, I wish West Ham a great season.
Thank you, Pat. And obviously, thank you again for me to Pat. Sorry, thank you. Thank you as well for watching or listening. And until next time, for me and Pat, take care, everyone. Stay safe. Come on, you irons, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.